Imagine going to bed after an ordinary day. The rain has been falling for hours, but rain is nothing unusual. You close your curtains, you settle into bed. You expect tomorrow to be just another day. But high above your town, hidden among the hills of Pennsylvania, a massive reservoir is holding back millions of tons of water. And tonight, something is going terribly wrong. Most people in town have no idea. No warning reaches their homes. No phone calls, no emergency alerts, no sirens. Only the sound of rain continuing to fall in the darkness. Then, just before midnight, the unimaginable begins. A wall of water starts racing down a narrow valley, moving faster than anyone can run, sweeping through forests, farms, bridges, and villages. And as the people of Johnstown sleep, one question remains. What happens when an entire town has only minutes to prepare for a disaster nobody believes is coming? This is the incredible true story of the Johnstown Flood of 1889, a night that changed American history forever.
The town of Johnstown sat peacefully in southwestern Pennsylvania. Surrounded by hills and connected by winding rivers, it was a growing industrial community filled with hard-working families. Steel mills provided jobs, businesses lined the streets, children attended school, neighbors knew one another. It was the kind of town where life followed a familiar rhythm. But the beauty of the surrounding landscape also carried a hidden danger. The town rested in a valley, and above that valley stood a large reservoir known as Lake Conemaugh. Holding the lake in place was the South Fork Dam. For years, the dam had quietly watched over the communities below. Most residents rarely thought about it. After all, it had stood there for decades. To many people, it seemed permanent, reliable, safe. Yet some observers had concerns. Questions had occasionally been raised about the condition of the dam. Repairs had been made over the years, but worries never completely disappeared. Still, life continued, and few imagined that the structure towering above them could become part of one of the most famous disasters in American history.
In late May of 1889, heavy rain began falling across the region. At first, nobody was particularly alarmed. Rain was common, but the weather refused to improve. Hour after hour, day after day, the skies remained gray. Streams swelled, rivers rose, fields became saturated. The ground could absorb no more water. Every drop now flowed directly into rivers and reservoirs. Up at Lake Conemaugh, water levels continued to climb. Workers and local officials watched nervously. The lake was rising faster than anyone wanted. Efforts were made to reduce pressure on the dam. Teams worked tirelessly in difficult conditions, but the rain kept coming. As the hours passed, concern turned into urgency. Messages were sent warning communities that the dam might be in danger.
Yet many residents had heard similar concerns before. Previous warnings had not led to disaster before. Some people believed the dam would hold. Others simply couldn't imagine a structure that large failing. Meanwhile, the weather showed no sign of stopping. By the afternoon of May 31st, the situation had become critical. The lake pressed against the dam with tremendous force. Workers fought desperately to save it. They added materials, they dug channels, they searched for solutions. But nature had created a challenge larger than anyone expected. Then, during the afternoon, the inevitable happened. The South Fork Dam could no longer contain the enormous volume of water behind it. In a matter of moments, Lake Conemaugh was unleashed. Millions of tons of water surged forward. What had been a peaceful lake became a fast-moving flood racing toward the communities below.
The valley transformed into a pathway for an unstoppable force. Trees were swept away. Structures were carried downstream. Railroad equipment disappeared into the rushing current. Entire sections of the landscape changed within minutes. As the flood moved through the valley, it gathered more and more debris. Everything in its path became part of the wave. The flood grew larger and more powerful as it advanced toward Johnstown. People living in smaller communities upstream were among the first to realize something extraordinary was happening. Some saw the approaching water and rushed to higher ground. Others had only moments to react. Word spread quickly, but the flood moved even faster. In Johnstown, many residents were already dealing with rising river levels from days of rain. Flooding was not uncommon in the region. Most people assumed this was simply another difficult weather event. They could not yet see what was coming. Then reports began arriving. The dam had failed. A massive flood was heading toward town.
For some, the news sounded impossible. How could an entire lake suddenly be moving down the valley? How could so much water arrive at once? But soon, there was no doubt. The flood was real, and it was approaching rapidly. As evening arrived, Johnstown faced a situation unlike anything in its history. Families rushed to safer locations. Neighbors helped one another. People searched for loved ones. The familiar streets of the town were about to experience a moment that would be remembered for generations. When the flood reached Johnstown, it transformed the landscape in ways nobody could have imagined. The force of the water carried debris from miles away.
Buildings were displaced from their foundations. Railroad cars were moved from their tracks. Entire neighborhoods found themselves overwhelmed by the rushing water. Yet, amid the chaos, stories of courage emerged. Neighbors helped neighbors. Families searched for one another. Rescue efforts began almost immediately. People climbed to higher ground. Others used whatever resources they could find to assist those around them. In the days that followed, news of the disaster spread across the United States. Newspapers carried dramatic headlines. Communities nationwide followed the story. Support arrived from distant cities. Donations poured in. Volunteers traveled to Pennsylvania to help. For many Americans, it became one of the first major disasters they followed through extensive national news coverage. The Johnstown Flood captured the attention of an entire nation. It also sparked important conversations about engineering, infrastructure, and public safety. Questions were asked about dam maintenance, inspections, emergency planning, and the responsibilities involved in managing large structures. The lessons learned from Johnstown would influence future approaches to disaster prevention and preparedness. Today, more than a century later, the Johnstown Flood remains one of the most remarkable stories in American history, not only because of the scale of the event, but because it revealed how quickly ordinary life can change. One day, families were going about their routines, working, studying, planning for the future. The next, they found themselves facing circumstances they never expected. The story of Johnstown is ultimately about resilience, about communities coming together during difficult moments, about learning from the past, and about remembering the people who experienced one of the most extraordinary nights in American history. A night that began with rainfall, a night that seemed ordinary, a night when most people expected nothing unusual, and a night that would forever be remembered as midnight on the Little Conemaugh. If you enjoyed this story and want to discover more incredible true events from history, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every week, we explore forgotten disasters, mysterious events, engineering failures, and unbelievable moments that shape the world we live in today. Let us know in the comments what historical event you would like to see featured next. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new documentary. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story from history's most unforgettable moments.